Okay. Why DAI master classes? Dementia Alliance International is developing a curriculum for universities, and as part of this development, and because our members are the experts through the lived experience, we are presenting 4 master classes during Dementia Awareness Month 2014. This is our second master class, also a very important topic for anyone diagnosed with dementia. Our panelists today are myself, John Sandblom from the USA, as I said, a board member of DAI, Dave Kramer from the US, a medical doctor, retired, and Jennifer Butte from the UK, a medical doctor, retired. Just briefly about myself, I was first diagnosed in 2007 at the age of 48. They initially thought it was FTD and now believe it's atypical Alzheimer's disease. I'm one of the founding members of DAI and currently serving as one of the co-chairs of the board of directors. Dr. Dave Kramer practiced and directed residency training in emergency medicine for 25 years prior to his Alzheimer's-induced retirement. Dave, would you like to say a few more words about yourself?
I'd be happy to, John. I'll add that I was diagnosed with early onset, or younger onset as they would say in the UK, and it's probably more accurate, Alzheimer's disease at the age of 56 after 2 years of very extensive evaluation and testing. And I'd be happy to discuss that more in detail as we come to those issues in the conversation with your doctor.
Perfect. And Dr. Jennifer Butte. Dr. Butte worked as a doctor in Africa, India, and Ukraine, and as a general practice doctor in the UK, which is a family doctor in the community, for 25 years before retiring early because of younger onset dementia. Jennifer, the floor is yours.
I developed symptoms when I was in my late 50s. But I couldn't get a diagnosis for 5 years. But I resigned in between those 2 dates because I knew there was something the matter with me. But because I was so well known to all my colleagues, nobody would believe there was anything the matter with me. So I have full sympathy with people who feel their doctors don't believe them.
Very good. Okay. The first slide, we're going to talk about preparing for your appointment. I apologize. And everything involved with preparing for your appointment. And of course, the first most critical thing would be if you don't already have the doctor that you would like to go see, then you have to locate one. And I'll start with Dave about a little bit of input, what he suggests as far as finding a good doctor.
Thanks, John. Clearly, this is location dependent, and so what I have to say will undoubtedly be somewhat different than what Jennifer has to say regarding this. But here in the United States, most people would bring any complaints that they would have to their primary care physician initially. And so my suggestion at that point is that if you or your family or your primary care physician suspect that you have dementia of any kind or unspecified, you really should arrange to see a neurologist who has an interest or expertise in dementia. I'd be happy at a later time to go into what we feel the workup should include But there's no question in my mind, with the accessibility for the vast majority of us here in the United States, that your workup should be managed by a neurologist.
Thanks, Dave. Jennifer, what can you add to that?
Well, it's different in the UK, John, because the general practitioners act as gatekeepers to the hospital consultants. And someone in England would go first to their general practitioner. And in England, the problem might be to get the general practitioner to believe them. I mean, my general practitioner did believe me. And if you're younger, you get sent to a neurologist. But you would want to go and see a neurologist that had a particular interest in dementia, but you would know who that was in your locality. And if you were older, you would be sent to a memory clinic. But in UK, your workup would be done by your general practitioner. You would have all your blood tests and your assessments done before you got to that stage, because it would only be when you went to the hospital doctors would you have your scans. So in the UK, it is slightly different.
Very good. So they would, basically the general practice doctor would rule out the other causes, and then whoever they refer you to would do the more finite, like any scans that they need to look at, that kind of thing?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I was going to say, in the U.S., some people that are still on more of an HMO kind of plan may run into a similar kind of problem in being able to get referred to the right doctor, because they do have to have a referral to go to anyone except their assigned primary care. I know I was on one at one point, and that particular one penalized your primary care financially, which I wouldn't think is ethical or anything else if they referred you. So trying to get a referral was extremely hard. Hopefully that kind of thing doesn't go on anymore. But in any case, sometimes it can be hard getting a referral because there's probably a little bit of ego involved, that the original doctor thinks they can handle it. You don't need a specialist, kind of thing. But hopefully that's rare, but it can happen. That must be somebody else's computer, maybe.
Yeah. John, there's a question from Rebecca to Jennifer. What is the age limit for neurologist versus memory clinic?
The neurologist would organise scans and a psychoneurological assessment himself, whereas the memory clinic is run by what we call psychogeriatricians, who are psychiatrists and who have particular training in people who are over 65. So in England, it would be important to find either a neurologist that was particularly interested in dementia, whereas the memory clinics, which are set up in England in all the different counties now, every locality has one, several in some counties now, they would deal with all the people who are uncertain whether they just have memory problems or whether they have dementia, and they would do all the necessary tests. So in England, it's very easy for a GP to send someone there because they would do all the necessary work. And in England, medication is restricted. There are medication that GPs can prescribe. There's medication that can only be prescribed if it's been authorized by the hospitals. And there's a third type of medication that can only be prescribed by the hospitals.
Jennifer, I think that what was being asked actually, though, is what is the age cutoff from where, instead of going to see a neurologist, one would go to the memory clinic there.
Sorry, I thought I said 65.
Ah, okay.
And essentially, that's the international cutoff for the age difference between early onset or younger onset and what would be considered regular onset of dementia.
I think so, yes, yeah.
Yeah, and it's confusing for U.S. citizens, so you have to pardon us, at least some of us, because we got used to the term early onset meaning young onset, and kind of the world standard now is young onset means you were diagnosed before age 65, and so it's really hard for me to adjust because I called it early onset for so long, and now early onset means early stage. But it's confusing to me, but that's the way they've defined them now, I guess. So, okay. I am, Laura, to the point you made, should I go ahead and mute everyone and then just unmute Dave and Jennifer?
Well, it's okay right now. If everybody can just try to, if you hear a phone going off or your dog barking or your Skype going, there's a little microphone icon on your screen. For me, it's in the bottom left-hand corner of my Zoom window. Just click on it and it mutes your microphone. I love that we can have this discussion back and forth. This is really nice, but we just keep the background noise down. I think we'll be okay.
Yeah.
Also, mute you.
Yeah. We'll put Laura in charge of that. She's so good.
I can't. I'm powerless.
Wait. I can help you with that.
Okay, then I can watch. That's good. I can just watch if there's any noises and I can mute people.
Okay, great. Let me just do that real quick here. Now you guys can only see the PowerPoint. You can't see when I'm doing other stuff, can you?
No.
No.
Okay.
There we go. Look at that.
Looks like we've changed hosts here.
Yes. I gave her that capability so then she can mute people and stuff.
Ooh.
So watch it.
She now has the power, like on Survivor, to boot somebody from the island.
Anyways.
Okay. So, moving on. One of the things we discussed, which of course most of you know, but it's important when you go to a doctor's appointment to make sure you have a list of all the medications you're taking. A lot of us go to more than one doctor and have more than one doctor prescribing medications. And I know when I go to any of my doctor's appointments, that's the first thing the nurse goes over, or second or third, whatever, but they always go over the list of what you're taking, has there been any changes, so on and so forth. I found the easiest thing for me is I have an app on my phone that has all my medications in it and the dosages when I take them, and it also has persistent reminders. It's what reminds me to take my medicine or I'd really be messed up. But however you can manage, whether it's a written list or when you print out from a computer or whatever, it's always good to have a list. You really should carry a list of that at all times in case there's an emergency. I'm sure Dave could speak to emergency room physicians. Definitely want to know what medications you're taking, right, Dave?
No question about it. And I would add an important aspect of that, and that is one should be absolutely certain to include all vitamins, supplements, so-called natural medications, etc., in that list, because many of them have side effects, drug interactions with other medicines, and so forth. So it's absolutely crucial to include all vitamin supplements, natural medications, and of course, over-the-counter medicines that you might be taking also.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Yeah, we often don't think about vitamins as being drugs, but they truly are. They're just not ones that are usually referred to as drugs or regulated like drugs, but they still do things for you. They can have negative and positive consequences and interactions. So great point, Dave. Jennifer, anything you want to add to that particular item?
Well, I agree utterly with what Dave has said, but also some drugs that one is on can also cause memory problems. So it's always useful for the doctors to know so they can, if necessary, reduce medication or suggest that it might be due to medication rather than the other way around.
Absolutely, absolutely.
John,
yes.
A couple of people want to know what app you use for your medication list.
Let me look real quick. I think it's called Pillboxy, but I want to make sure I say the right thing. And it is, it's called Pillboxy. And it is, I've got it on an iPhone, but it's probably available for like Droid and stuff too. I'm not certain of that, but I've got it on an iPhone, and I paid few bucks for it. I had a free one, but it didn't have persistent reminders, which was a big problem for me because, we know what happens with that. You look at the reminder and you're busy, and then next thing you know, oh, yeah, I never did take that. So, yeah, this will just keep reminding me until I check off that I've taken it, which is what I need to stay on track. What I have to be careful of that I've done a few times lately, which really bothers me, is I've checked it off and intended to take the medicine right then, but something interrupted me and I didn't take the medication. So I've got to try and retrain myself, take the medication first, then check it off. So nothing's foolproof, I guess, but we do the best we can. Okay, and then something that I think Jennifer first brought up was about writing down all of your symptoms and dates that they occurred to take to the doctor. And that's not something that would have occurred to me right away. So Jennifer, would you like to describe what you're thinking on that?
Well, we know ourselves and we think everyone else knows what we know, but they don't. And if you're going to a doctor who perhaps doesn't know you at all, they have no idea whether how you are as you appear to them is the same as always or whether things have changed. So that's why it's so helpful to actually write down significant things. I mean, not what you had for breakfast, but significant alterations in what you consider to be normality for you, and with the dates. So the doctor can see that you're not just vaguely thinking something might be the matter, but you have actually facts to back it up, because the doctor does not know unless you tell them.
Very good. Dave, anything to add?
I think that's great advice. By the very nature of what we have going on, we're not going to remember everything. For me, having my wife with me at the doctor's office each time is hugely helpful because she remembers what's been happening. And so if available, if you've got somebody, a family member, spouse, child, etc., who can go with the patient to the doctor's office, that's another way to ensure that the history is complete.
Very good. Yeah, which is covered on the last point of the slide. If possible, take someone with you that knows you well and knows your history. sometimes it can be a little bit of a detriment if they don't know much about you, because if you're in the diagnosis process, they'll start asking them questions, and sometimes they don't accurately answer things because they don't know the history and how you've changed and that kind of thing. So if you do take somebody with you that doesn't know intimately your history, you want to make sure that's clear to the physician as well. Would probably be good advice.
I would agree. It's a double-edged sword, potentially.
Yeah. And the next one was make a list of questions for your doctor. And this has always been a big one for me, because I always think of questions, but I never remember when I'm at the neurologist what the questions were. So I started a Word document on my computer that I could go in and just add a question to, and then it becomes remembering to print it out before I go to the doctor is the biggest problem. You know, I got to thinking it's probably better to put it on my phone because I know I'm going to have my phone with me. But making a list of your questions for the doctor, I think, is real important, especially with any kind of memory impairment. You're not going to remember what your questions were, and it's probably a good idea to make a note of what his answers are so that you are sure, he or she, I shouldn't say he, because I know sometimes I start second guessing myself on what the doctor told me, and may have to check again. So it's probably a good idea to make a note too. And I guess I'll start with Jennifer first this time. What would you have to add to that, Jennifer?
No, I think that's very important because you'll forget otherwise.
Yeah.
You know, you think you remember, so you must write down your questions. And it's a good suggestion that you've made that you write down the answers as well. Yeah.
How about you, Dave? What can you add?
No, I think that's great advice. It's interesting that you mentioned about printing it out if you put it on your computer. For me, one of the reasons that I use the built-in Notes app for my iPhone is that it automatically syncs up with the cloud and with my computer at home and with my iPad and so forth, so that wherever I am, I have access to the same information. That's one of the reasons that if I were going to be keeping a list of my medications, that's where I would keep a list. I happen to be only on 2, so it's very easy for me. But I think that the ability to have that sync with all your devices and computers nowadays is very valuable, so that wherever you are, you have access to the same information.
Good advice. Oh, I forgot to mention one of the things about the app I use, that Pillboxy. A nice feature about it is you can go into it and email your list of medications to any email address. So let's say they said, gee, could we get that list? Sure, what's your email address? And you just email them the list of your medications and strengths and when you take them, and it makes it pretty simple, really, if you happen to go to a new doctor.
That does sound nice.
Yeah, I've used that once now, and it was pretty handy. But just wanted to mention that. Okay, all great.
Can I add one thing
Sure.
to the list of questions?
Yep.
There are still some doctors around, at least in the US, who unfortunately are not really receptive to a lot of questioning. They feel like you're not trusting what they're saying. They feel like maybe, they're not as in charge as they should be. And my piece of advice for anyone who comes up upon that kind of situation would be to find another doctor. Simple enough. I think any good physician is going to be an excellent listener also.
Excellent. I appreciate you saying that, and it's even better coming from a doctor, because I'm a big proponent of the exact same thing. You're the consumer. If you're not happy with the physician you're going to, fire them, get a different one. I mean, you know, I had that happen to me at the beginning of my process. Had a physician didn't like questions and actually became quite angry if you asked him ones he didn't like. So I don't think anyone should ever tolerate that type of treatment. So it's always within your rights to. Now, Jennifer, that may be a little different in the UK.
Yes, because you usually have your family doctor. And I would always say to people in England, make sure that they've got the qualification of being a member of the Royal College of General Practitioners, because they will always listen to your questions.
Very good.
Part of our training.
Very
but
good.
There are a few doctors in the community who don't have that qualification.
Okay, good for the people in the UK to know that. Awesome. Okay. If there's no other questions, we can move on to the next slide. Oops, what did I do? Oh, wait a minute. I went too far, didn't I? Okay, at your appointment. Make sure you understand what your doctor tells you. Ask questions if you don't. Pretty straightforward, I think. It's just a matter of sometimes we can be a little passive about, we're not understanding what the doctor's telling us, and yet we don't say, wait, slow down, start over, or explain what you mean. That's, in a nutshell, that's kind of what we're trying to say with that one. What could you add to that, Dave?
I think you've said, I think it almost speaks for itself, to be honest. I think there are still situations where people are intimidated by their physician, feel like maybe they're asking a silly question or a stupid question. There's no such thing as a stupid question when you're talking to your doctor. You are the consumer. You are your own best advocate, and you have the right and responsibility to understand exactly what is going on with your health care. So I think every patient should feel completely comfortable in asking any question and asking for clarification of anything that he or she doesn't understand.
Excellent. Jennifer, anything to add?
There's two things. If you don't understand when you get home, then go back and ask again. Doctors don't mind. And the other thing I would say, in England again, many doctors have the facility in their surgeries to print out leaflets from where they're sitting on any subject under the sun. So someone can always ask for a leaflet on something. They don't have to go and hunt for one. They just print it off on the computer printer where they sit. So that is something that can be done in England everywhere.
Very good. Very good.
John, if I might?
Yeah.
Add one thing, and that is a lot of doctors' offices here in the United States now are starting to communicate with email also, and will respond at the doctor's availability to questions that you might have and so forth. So it's another way that you can communicate with your physician.
Yeah. Yeah, there's all kinds of new things with a lot of the medical practices taking advantage of technology. I know my family physician is part of a big network, and they added a thing called oh gosh, I can't remember the name of it, but you go in and set up your account, and everything there may be a private area that I can't see, but basically all the data they add to my chart, new appointments, everything I can go in and look at. I get text message reminders about appointments. I get emails. I get all kinds of communication from this medical record thing. So it's pretty cool. I went in there and was reading stuff that I thought, gee, nobody ever told me that. So sometimes you find out things and nobody bothered to tell you, but so check out the options.
Yes, and in addition to that, John, there's a very big trend toward a much more open and shared medical record or health record, so that many of the new computerized medical records, electronic health records, have easy access by the patient also, and family members that he or she allows, so that you can actually see what's being written about you in your medical record, so that you can have input, et cetera, to make sure that it's accurate. This is a really nice trend in openness and transparency for patients.
Very good. When you set up your account, you might want to make sure you use a good, strong password, however. The next item, be proactive in your health care. And that's something we can't stress enough, and probably won't be able to say enough about. Dave, I'll let you kick this off. I know you're really big on this item.
Well, I mean, I think that it's very important to be an educated consumer of healthcare. And there are a lot of resources available to non-medical people, to so-called lay people, that enables anyone to really have access to a lot of the knowledge base in medicine that's out there. From my perspective, and I have no financial interest in any website or anything like that, but websites like WebMD, for example, have a lot of information at your fingertips that can help. And in my mind, you shouldn't diagnose yourself. You should be very careful about getting scared because of things that you might read and so forth. But I think that the ability to read about what's going on with you is wonderful and something that people should take advantage of. And so being proactive means understanding what's going on. It means asking questions. It means, in my opinion, asking difficult questions to your doctor. So we're coming up upon the next bullet point here about medications, but you need to ask your doctor things that are important that he or she may not talk about with you. So, for example, I think that if a medication is recommended, you should ask about the efficacy and the medical evidence for the medication. I think you should ask about the risk-benefit ratio. No medication is without side effects. For me, it's all about the quality of life, not just the length of life. You should ask about potential drug interactions with any of your current medications. I think that the doctors oftentimes do not take the initiative to talk about all of these aspects that you have a right to know. I think that one of the basic things you should ask, and Jennifer appropriately mentioned this earlier, is do you need all the medications that you're currently on? Are they really providing something for you? I think you should ask Are they all safe for somebody with Alzheimer's or a related dementia? These are things that the doctor may not think about on his or her own, and that you, as an educated consumer, should be asking. And again, don't forget to consider and ask about, if you are on over-the-counter medications, any side effects or drug-drug interactions that might exist with them.
Awesome. Jennifer?
When I worked, I worked in a practice with 14,000 patients. So my experience of many of them was they just wouldn't know where to start. So I would encourage them to go to a middleman. For example, in England, we have what we call the Dementia Web, which produce little booklets which can be given out free to everybody. And in the last year in England, every single locality has on the internet what we call a memory prescription, which is related to your locality. And you get a piece of paper, a sheet of papers, and on it are listed local support, what it involves, what it covers, and how to obtain it. And it's all there in a folder almost. And that can be given to everybody. And the person can go home and then take their time to go through it. Because if they just look on the internet, they just don't know where to start, because there's so much there. So we try and make it easy, but some doctors, even in England, we're not perfect, got a long way to go, don't know about this. But in England, this is in every single county. You can get, it's related to your postcode, a sheaf of papers which tell you everything you want to know.
That's awesome.
I'd love to see that here in the United States. I think that's great.
Yeah, that is great. DAI is still such a new, young organization, but one of the things I've thought that hopefully eventually we can have a lot more resources of great importance listed there. Like, if you live in the UK, you should, check out this resource, so on and so forth, so that people know where to go to get those kinds of things. I think it's really important, and like Jennifer said, the internet is so huge now. If you didn't have dementia, it can be hugely confusing to say Google a subject and get all these hundreds of pages of results and what's pertinent, what's good, because as great as the internet is, I also feel like you can believe probably less than half of what you read on the internet. So you have to be very careful what source you go to. Let's put it that way. You have to be careful whose stuff you're reading, and if you're reading it off of social media, I would read it with a huge grain of salt.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think you have to understand, that you need to use reputable sources. There's no question about that.
Yeah. Well, and there's so much urban legend that keeps going around on social media, not particularly on healthcare, but just on everything. And I got burned one too many times on that stuff, and that turned me around to where I start out disbelieving it and have to see that it's actually true before I'll believe any of the things that are posted on there. That's a different subject. Okay, let's move on to, we kind of covered the medications and how important, if new medications are prescribed, you really need to have the doctor go over possible side effects. I know in the US there's almost a habit of leaving that up to the pharmacists. And sometimes the doctor might not be real well versed on the side effects. I'm not real sure, but I think especially with medications that have to do with dementia and so forth, that's real important conversation to be having with the doctor about what the side effects might be. Dave, what would you add to that?
I think that what you're saying is partially true, and that is, I think that there are unfortunately some doctors who aren't well versed on that. I think that just the nature of how many different medicines there are and how many different new ones come up all the time and so forth, it's impossible for any physician to keep all that data in his or her mind. Pharmacists are well educated and are well trained to understand that and to have that more at their fingertips. Pharmacists also do have a lot of technology at their fingertips, which can look at drug-drug interactions and side effects and so forth. And physicians also, though, have that same technology that they can carry in their pocket at all times, in their smartphone and so forth. So those are questions that are definitely worth asking about from your physician too, because I think to have that as part of the conversation is absolutely key. John, if I might take just a little bit of liberty, I've been scanning the questions that have been coming through, and one of the questions that came through was asking Jennifer and me whether any medications are warranted for dementia other than possible psychotropic drugs for hallucination. The questionnaire goes on to say, if Aricept only slows down, parentheses, best case, symptoms for 6 months, but you have to stay on the medication for the rest of your life, is that warranted? And I think that is an excellent question. And is it okay if we deal with that now, John?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Jennifer and I differ a little bit on this. I'll take the liberty of going first, and I will say that it's clear from the question that the questionnaire understands that the medical evidence for any of the medicines that are currently available for specific dementia do not in any way cure. There is no cure. They do not in any way reverse the disease. There is no evidence that anything that we currently have available reverses the disease. And at best, according to the medical evidence out there from population studies, at best might slow down the progression of the disease for a short period of time. So I have to say, for me, it's all about quality of life. So for some people, they want to hang on to that hope that maybe the medicine will have effect. And for some, it's been shown to have an effect. But that's the difference between responding as an individual patient and responding for a population of patients. And I would not take anything personally that had any significant side effects at all. I have a number of friends who felt like they were in a fog with all the medicine that they were on and felt so much better and are enjoying life so much more when they've stopped some of the medicines that they had put on for their dementia. So from my perspective, the evidence for any of the typical classical medications for Alzheimer's or related dementias is very weak and does not justify any kind of continued use except in rare circumstances. I'll defer to Jennifer, who I know feels that there's And there is, I'll grant her this, some symptom relief with some of the medicines. And she has a feeling on this that I'm going to let her go with.
Well, it's slightly different in England because we get our medications free on the National Health. So it's in the National Health interest to only give medication that is proved to be of benefit. So in England, if you're started on Aricept, donepezil, you can only, well, you used to until just about a year ago, could only be started by the memory clinic or the neurologist. And that was when they had a diagnosis of dementia. And you would only be put on it for 2 to 3 months. Then you would have to go back and to be reassessed. And if your scores had not improved, you would be taken off the medication. Or if the side effects had proved to be too bad, also you would be taken off them. Because I agree with Dave that it's the quality of life that's important. And if they don't work, there's absolutely no point being on them. But in England, it's very carefully monitored. So the people who are on long-term donepezil are the ones that are benefiting. Now, I was put on it and had complications, and then was also put on memantine, which got rid of all my hallucinations. Now, I would not put people with dementia on psychotropic drugs because my experience in England is it makes things worse. But memantine does get rid of hallucinations, whereas if you give psychotropic drugs to people with Lewy body dementia, you're in serious trouble. But in England, where I was, there was a lot of research done on this, and they found out the combination of donepezil and memantine in small doses actually worked better than just one or the other. We also found out that the side effects wear off for some people if they can get through that initial hump. But everyone is different. I accept that. And I heartily agree, if they don't work, don't take them. Now, when my husband died 3 years ago, I couldn't sleep for obvious reasons. So I thought my medication was making it worse. So I reduced my medication. And after 3 months, my family said, please, Mum, go back on it. You are far worse.
Well, I think that Jennifer makes some great points there. The only thing that I would say is I would not recommend, and I'm betting Jennifer is not recommending, that anyone take themselves off or change the dose of their medications without discussing it with your physician. I don't think you should do any adjustment of your medications because there are problems with some medicines stopping them abruptly or decreasing the doses, etc. So, Jennifer, wouldn't you agree that that's not something that people should do on their own?
Yes, but they should be willing to discuss it with their doctors because
absolutely,
some doctors are willing to consider reducing dosages rather than just stopping it, whereas other doctors might say, well, stop it, whereas just reducing the dosage might be sufficient.
Very good. All excellent points, yes. And important to mention that, Dave, that there are certain medication you have to titrate, I believe is the term, off of instead of stopping abruptly. That's maybe a small pool of them, but there are some. But I have, interestingly, something Jennifer referred to, I have heard in conferences some professionals that their whole specialty is pharmaceuticals and dementia patients talk about the dangers of psychotropic drugs with dementia patients. And there was even a professor from the University of Iowa Medical School who had done a big study on this and had a reference chart that's available on the web about what he recommends if you absolutely have to use something. due to behaviors with dementia, what the only things he finds acceptable for certain types of dementia, and it differed depending upon the type of dementia. And he spoke at length about how certain drugs will cause certain dementias to be worse, not better. It'll cause them to be way worse. And yet, and there was certain dementias that a drug I hear people all the time saying they're on, he mentioned. And I always wonder, gosh, do they have one of the types that it's actually making it worse? So it's okay to question and check resources, get a second opinion, whatever you need to, if you're questioning what a doctor's prescribed or what they want to prescribe. So
yeah, I would add that it's very difficult to study the effects of medications in general, and more so even on patients with dementia, because of the very nature of our disease and telling what's going on with us and so forth. And one of the interesting things about dementia, and any one of us who has dementia is certainly aware of this, is the rate in which someone might have his or her disease advance is totally unpredictable. Mm-hmm. Many patients with dementia become very, very stable with no medication whatsoever for a while. They plateau. And then maybe later on their disease might progress and so forth. So the time course, the severity of the disease is unpredictable. There are some ballpark figures that are given, but none of these applies to an individual. It applies only to the population of patients. So as a result, it's very hard to know, well, did this medication cause this person to plateau or to progress more slowly, or is it just the nature of the disease that individual has? So that's why I feel it's so important to take into account the side effects, drug-drug interactions, expense, if that's an issue for you in the United States, and it is for many people, and all those characteristics in making the decisions regarding your medications.
Awesome. Yeah. Oh, and I should add this person I saw, he couldn't stress enough that he felt like using no drugs was always the best option if possible. And that was kind of refreshing to hear, He only spoke to the fact that if it seems to come down to that's absolutely the only alternative, okay, here's my best advice, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and if I might, we have to also understand the perspective of the physician. It's the nature of doctors to want to do something, to want to make patients better. Mm-hmm. And it's very challenging to be a physician and take care of a patient who has a disease that you cannot make better. And so I understand the tendency to prescribe a medication that might have very limited efficacy. I understand the inclination of a physician, to hope that something would work. But I would suggest to you that there are a lot of things, in fact, that do work. And I'm going to shut up so you can move on, John, and get to some of those things so that the doctor is not powerless. The doctor just needs to know what to tell the patient as far as things that actually do help with dementia.
Absolutely.
Well, I know, just to add to that, and that's very, very true, and I agree with that, but I know a tremendous number of people whose dementia has improved since they've been on medication. But in this country, they're very carefully selected because they wouldn't be on it otherwise. I mean, I live in a dementia-friendly village now with hundreds of other people, and I know who's on it and who's not, and who has improved and who hasn't. So some don't, I do know that, but some do. So those who do improve surely should have the opportunity to have that option.
I would never argue with that.
Yeah, I would say it's obviously a personal decision, and also important in the mix is if you do have a cognitive neurologist that you trust. I use the term cognitive neurologist. It doesn't have to be a cognitive neurologist, but if you have a doctor you highly trust, then you can weigh their opinion. Obviously, it's going to weigh heavy in your decision, but it definitely is all about quality of life. And if you're taking things that are decreasing the quality of your life, that's not what you want to be doing. That's not helping anybody. But I agree with Dave in that the doctor wants to help, and there's kind of a culture of the doctor, they're going to write you a prescription, and there's going to be a magic pill that's going to help you, and so I think that's kind of built into the culture a little bit too much. Of course, then you can get into all the discussions of big pharmaceutical companies and all that kind of stuff, and their influence, even to the point where they're advertising to us now, even though a doctor has to prescribe it. So, but that's a whole nother discussion that we won't delve deep into. The next thing is make sure you ask your doctor what resources are available for dementia. Sometimes they're going to have some good answers for you. I have heard from some people that some doctors didn't have a lot for them in the manner of resources, which is something DAI is kind of sprung out of trying to help with. But you definitely want to ask, because you don't know without asking. I guess, Jennifer, I should start with you this time. What can you add to as far as asking the doctor about resources?
Well, again, this is for people who perhaps don't know where to start. One would recommend that they go to the Alzheimer's Society in England. It's brilliant. They know all the resources, or Age UK, or the Dementia Web. They would just be the first three things, and all the other resources are linked in with them. And they would be able to often visit the person. We have a wonderful system. Somebody would go and visit the person, and when they get the diagnosis, and discuss with them what it was that would help them, whether it would be sport or mental stimulation or tea and dance or boat trips or whatever it was. It would be individually tailored to that person. But the person wouldn't know that was possible unless the doctor gave them the initial contact. So that is what the doctor's responsibility is, I think, to give every person the initial contact to where to start off on the journey.
Absolutely. Dave?
I would just like to ask Jennifer, how do I set up an appointment with somebody in the UK?
Well, things have only changed in the last 3 years. I've been on fighting this business for 5 years, and I'm so thrilled the way it's changed. But we've been fighting governments and, the doctors at the top and medical education. It works. I'm so glad when we all get worked up about these things. We can make a difference.
Yeah, and I believe that we can make a difference over here in the United States, but I just feel it's a tad more difficult than what you're coming upon there. And I'm very impressed with the system that you have for taking care of your dementia patients in the UK. So sarcasm intended, but noting that it really is terrific over there.
Yeah.
Well, we're still fighting. We've got a lot more to do, but we've made a start.
Yeah. Well, and you can't get anywhere without making a start. That's for sure. Yeah, yeah, it is admirable that just the way the healthcare system in the UK, Canada, many countries is set up. Makes it a little easier to change procedures, because I think it has to be uniform how some of those things are done, or they can demand that it be uniform. Where Dave, I believe in the U.S. it's a rather hard thing to change that uniformly. Is that right?
John, I've got to be honest, I'm not exactly sure. Change what?
As far as what the procedures should be if someone is given a diagnosis of dementia, and
Yeah.
how that needs to be handled, what resources should be available, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're talking about standard of care issues.
Yeah.
And that, there are standards of care which should be uniform, not only, in my opinion, across the United States, but around the world. And it should be based on the best available medical evidence and research for whatever the issue is and the medical problem is. And I don't think those things should, really differ from one location to another. We should all be utilizing the best available evidence. So it is tough to change, but I think that if we're talking about high standards of care that are based on really high quality medical evidence, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I was perhaps thinking more in terms of how one gets to the diagnosis, and then the thing I frequently hear in the U.S. is they're pretty much told, okay, you have dementia, and okay, here's a prescription, and there's not really a care plan. There's not a lot of discussion about what now kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think that is a problem, and that is a little bit different. That is not the same everywhere. I think that differs also according to what I would call the quality of your physician. I think that, again, as you alluded to, doctors sometimes are too quick to just write a prescription and be done with it. And there's a lot of things that can be done. When you go to the next slide, John, you'll see that you've got them listed out there. Some of them that really do help, and that's the prescription that I would think should be written first. And there are others also that we can discuss, the things that can be done. We do have a long way to go here in the United States, though, to get that uniformity of treatment plan in place. And that's something that it sounds like they have a lot better universal approach to in the UK.
We've still got a lot to do with doctors who think that drugs, as you said, are the only answer, because they're not. I mean, I utterly agree with David that there's a tremendous amount that can be done positively for dementia that doesn't involve drugs. I really do believe that.
We're on the same page there. Before you get into that, John, can I respond to a comment that was made in the chat, in the window? Because unfortunately, one of the participants made a statement which is almost incredible and obviously ludicrous, and said A doctor I went to said that a person with dementia couldn't possibly ask so many intelligent questions. And the only response to that is, not only can I ask intelligent questions, but I'm intelligent enough to find another physician. There is no other response that's appropriate in that kind of a situation.
I agree completely. I agree completely. Yeah, I did see that. Sid said that, and that is just, yeah, that's almost beyond words. I've heard even worse come from physicians, but that's just a good example. Yep. You should never stand for that type of treatment or comments, that's for sure. I was just looking through here to see if there was anything else that should be addressed before we go on. Okay. So let's talk about best practices, they're often called. The things you can do which don't have anything to do with getting a prescription from your doctor, but things that there's some pretty good evidence that they have a positive effect on your disease. And those are things like remaining social, socializing with people, not just being holed up in your house, never talking to anybody, never interacting, that kind of thing. That's not good. Stay physically active, have a good diet, and keep your mind active. Challenge your mind. Don't be a couch potato and sit there and watch TV all day. That definitely doesn't challenge the mind much. What else would you add to that, Dave?
Well, first of all, I'd say that those are not only best practices for dementia, but best practices for life in general. And what would I add to that? I guess the only other thing that I would add to that would be ice cream. Ice cream makes people happy.
Yep. Everything in moderation, right?
Exactly.
Yep. You got to have the enjoyment in there too. And as far as staying active, you know what I always say? I always say, find something you enjoy doing. Because if you enjoy doing it, you're going to keep doing it. But if it's something you hate, it's going to be a fight continually to get yourself to do it. So find something to stay active that you like. That's my take on that. What do you think of that?
I agree 100%. If you've really enjoyed a particular activity, keep doing it. From our perspective, for example, when I was finally diagnosed with Alzheimer's, shortly thereafter, my wife said, well, let's move down to Naples, Florida, where we owned a house that we had been using for vacation and so forth, because we love to be outside. So why not be somewhere where we can be outside all the time and enjoy it? I think that doing things that made you happy and that make you happy are key. So absolutely. They talk about music, for example, being so helpful to patients with dementia. And I think that especially personal music that you liked when you were younger and so forth, hugely valuable. For a lot of people, for people who are involved with the arts or with art and more creative and so forth, continue to do those things. Don't stop. I think that there's so many things that help people, and yet people, for whatever reason, whether it be because of the stigma attached to a diagnosis of dementia or embarrassment or whatever, tend to withdraw, especially initially. And that's the worst thing you can do. I think it's important to stay out there, stay active, continue to do the things that you can and that have made you happy for a long, long time, and to, just remain as long as possible the same.
Awesome. Jennifer, anything to add to that?
I agree with everything David said, and laughter is so important. There was an article in our British Medical Journal last year about the difference it made the dementia for people who laugh, and how we should help other people to laugh. So that's very important.
Yeah.
So I agree that we should continue to do what we enjoy doing, but I've also found out since I've had dementia, we can relearn some things or actually do things we've never done before. We can start new things. So that's important as well. And also, I have been quite blown away with Professor Kawashima's research, the Japanese professor, that if we do the 3 R's all together on a regular basis, the reading aloud, the writing and the arithmetic, mental arithmetic, on a regular basis, it can actually improve our dementia. And I run groups here, and I've seen it, and the staff have seen it. It's very simple. It's all on the internet. Professor Kawashima's stuff.
Yeah, and I agree completely with Jennifer. I think laughter is hugely important. And I think it's very important for us to be able to laugh at ourselves. And I think that if we're able to laugh at ourselves and at what we have and the foibles that we have and the mistakes that we make and so forth, the alternative crying just sucks. And yes. I think we're able to laugh at ourselves, and other people will feel much more comfortable in dealing with us and involving us. So I think that Jennifer is dead on about that. I concur fully with what she's mentioned with regard to learning new things. It's more difficult, but there's no question that we can form new memories. It's harder. It's definitely more difficult for people with dementia to do that, but it can be done. Alternative pathways in the brain can be made. Alternative synapses can be utilized, and so we can learn new things and have new experiences. It just takes more time, more effort, more repetition, and it can be very frustrating, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to give yourself a break. Be very patient with yourself. That's for sure. I think it is important to be able to laugh at yourself when you make a mistake or do something you never would have in the past. That's part of giving yourself a break and taking it easy on yourself, But those are great points. Music and laughter are really powerful things. I know if I listen to music from my younger times, it improves my mood almost immediately. So if you haven't tried that, definitely do that. Some people, I have heard some people just the music bothers them. If it bothers you, obviously don't use it. But most people find it very uplifting. So, and you can experiment with different types of music. Maybe one's better than another. I don't know. But yeah, music, humor, really important. State of mind. Look, there's no sugarcoating it. Dementia sucks. It sucks. We all know it sucks. But it's about taking lemons and making lemonade, right? You gotta accentuate the positives. You gotta do your best to adapt to your continually changing world, and you also have to allow other people to help you do things, but keep doing what you can do for yourself. Don't let anybody totally take over the things that you can still do for yourself, unless it's something dangerous or, we know what those things are. But, your routine stuff, if you can still do it, I highly encourage people to do as much for themselves as they still can, because I think that's part of keeping yourself in the best place you can. Anything else to add to that topic, either one of you, Dave or Jennifer?
I think it's a great summary, what you just said, John.
Okay, great. Okay.
Indeed.
At DAI, our vision is a world where a person with dementia continues to be fully valued. We thought that statement best sums it up, that you know, it's pretty obvious. We don't want, just because somebody has dementia, the history has been they're immediately devalued or discredited, or however you want to say it. And we want to change that way of thinking. And the famous quote, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever does." And a reminder, as far as membership of Dementia Alliance International is exclusive to people with dementia. Family carers, professional service providers, researchers, and healthcare professionals are welcome to join our newsletter mailing list and support us through donations. Our website is dementiaallianceinternational.org. Our Twitter handle is at Dementia Alliance, ending with the C. We do have a Facebook page at Dementia Alliance International, the / after Facebook, or you can just search Dementia Alliance International on Facebook. And our general email for information is info@dementiaallianceinternational.org.